Wache, welcome. Segon, bonjour. Kwe, pang, hi, hello, and welcome to Indigenous Voices. My name is Jeanette Quayaksheath, and how many people have been to the Royal Ontario Museum before? We have 4,100 guests from across Ontario, and we're also super excited to have simultaneous translation. Maybe the deaf community caught on that we have a sign of the day every episode. So I'm so excited to hear that 86% of you have returned. We're glad to have you back. And there's 14% that have chosen to join us for the first time today. I hope you like the music. Here's another poll. We always just give people time to arrive when there's 4,100 guests like that. So here's another poll. What did you think of the music? Did you move a little bit? Did you move a lot? Maybe not much at all. Not everybody's a dancer, and maybe not everybody's awake quite yet. So welcome to Indigenous Voices. And we're taking our time today to get ready to talk about a very important lived experience of oppression, not a social issue, a lived experience of oppression, because Indigenous people are part of living histories in Canada. So look at that, 52% of you moved to the music, 44% moved a little bit, and there's the 5% who probably are not the movers in the first place or still waking up like some of us. I've been awake for a while. You might kind of pick that up. I'm really glad that you don't have to actually be at school right now doing the whole mask thing day in and out, because as the weather gets warmer, it's not easy. So the Royal Ontario Museum has been here since 1914. And for those who don't do math fast like me, I did the math ahead of time, and that's 107 years. So the ROM is very young, and Canada, for that matter, is very young. And I have permission from my good friend Luann Neal out west back home to remind everybody that Indigenous people have been here since time immemorial. And so Canada itself as a country is small. And we take time to do the land acknowledgement because I myself come from more than 3,500 kilometers away. And I like to move out of the way and show you my favorite parking spot back home, where the Pacific Ocean meets the fresh water in the homelands of the Tishat and the Hopichsit. I'm sorry I didn't add those names ahead for our interpreters. But I respect that we have so much to be thankful for, and we are thankful to have the ROM in the homelands of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, Mississauga the Credit, and the Wendat for making it possible for us to live and work and live a good life in this homeland. So here at Indigenous Voices, it's possible to have guests like we will today to talk about residential school. I'll invite and introduce shortly, because of our community partnership with AMPAVA, Association for Native Development in the Performing and Visual Arts. And together through the arts, we're able to sort of create this space where we see the world through a different lens. And I kind of always like to hold this little bug eye up to the screen, because in past times, I used to hand this out around classrooms. So thank you to the Association for Native Development in the Performing and Visual Arts for being our community partner and giving us an opportunity to talk about important lived experiences. And today we have a sensitive topic warning. So before we jump in and actually meet our guest here on Indigenous Voices today, we're going to take some time to make some art. And that's why AMPAVA is our partner, because we're staying home, we're staying safe, and we're making art. So we're going to make art today, because before we jump in and talk about residential school, because this was a topic that we plan to offer anyway during our second season of live webinars like this, because teachers across Ontario are hungry for relevant content and ideas on how to teach difficult topics. So today, before we even teach anything about a difficult topic, we want to take care of our students and teachers alike. So everybody deserves to take care of themselves. And one of the things that I've learned in this little bit of a lifetime is this idea that our relationships start with ourselves and taking care of ourselves, taking care of our family who takes care of us, and our community who can then take care of our family, our nation, or maybe sometimes like those of us in the city, you know, take care of our community, our province takes care of our it, and so on, all the way out to the universe. You don't see at the very top of that list is the entire universe taking care of us on this planet, because we are all pure energy, and science will agree. We are all pure energy and cannot be created or destroyed, and only change form. Just like those beautiful souls of the 214 children found, they are beautiful souls that are pure energy. And by finding them, they will never be forgotten. And they're the first of many, sadly, to be found. But when we take care of ourselves, and before we start talking about big topics, we take care of ourselves. And one of my elders and knowledge carriers and mentors, Lee Miracle, recently reminded me that, remember, the self is the smallest circle here. So we don't want to get too self-absorbed. We want to take care of ourselves, but we also want to think about other people. We need to have healthy boundaries, but we also want to take care of each other and not just be selfish. So there's a balance in that. So when we get ready to talk about difficult topics here at the Rob School programs, one of the things that we encourage people to do is make art with us. And what we're going to do is look at a self-care plan. So here I have a symbol in sign language that means I love you. And we did this art activity for a recent genocide awareness activation. And we're not going to do the exact same art unless you feel like drawing an I love you, please do. So all I did was I drew my hand and cut it out, or you could even just draw your hand, even draw it this way here, and then add the fingers in later. I tend to draw the fingernails because I'm an artist like that. I draw the fingernails. And we're going to do the same idea. And on the back is where we can start adding our ideas of how we take care of ourselves. So this one is an example, but what I wanted to do for today is do circles as an example. So you can be as fancy as grabbing something that's a circle, or just making a best effort of a circle that you can. Oops, that pencil's not as sharp as I needed it to be, which, you know, it's kind of like a metaphor in life there. So, and you can add as much color or little color, but what I want to do is let's just start with the circle, because a circle is a healthy image of a boundary. And no matter how old we are, and I'm going to be 52 this year, I'm always still learning about boundaries, healthy boundaries. And I just happen to grab any old thing that is just a bit wider. So I'm going to make circles inside a circle just by making a little notch all the way around the edge of a circle. So if you've never made concentric circles before, or even lines inside a circle, so essentially what we'll do is make a line all the way in, and eventually we'll be able to get circles inside a circle, much like the one we did earlier. But I'm just going to go around the edge here. And while you're doing that, I find art is like an active meditation. So while you're doing that, I'm inviting everybody to think about who are the people in your life who love you just the way you are. People, when you see them, make you light up. And sometimes, you know, with COVID, we have to think really far back because we've been isolated. But for the most part, we can think in our mind's eye some of the people we know in our lives here, there, and everywhere who actually just love us just the way we are. And as we're drawing these little lines, you could think about them, you know, you could connect them later and make one big circle. But in your mind, think about each of these dashes being where you get support, where you find life energy. And I grew up with some rules as a kid. My dad said, you can do anything you want in life, as long as you don't hurt yourself or anybody else. So think about what are some of the activities, maybe the second line, there could be you making these little dashes like I am, and thinking about what are some of the activities you like to do when you know something's going to be stressful. So we know talking about residential school today is not going to be like a really feel good kind of like topic or lived experience of oppression. But we can know that there are some things we could do afterward. Like for me, I like to actually go outside and sweep up the garbage because I live in a beautiful waterfront neighborhood. And people come down here all the time to visit, but sadly they leave their garbage. So there's something really kind and satisfying about going outside and cleaning. So you know how art is, it's taking its time, but the essence is there. I'm just sort of giving you this idea that if you do those dashes as you go, you can actually have circles within circles within circles just by using something. And if you have to, you can even use your finger as a marker, which I often do. And then as you wish, you can add colors to these circles so that you could maybe add some of your favorite colors, or maybe you even add the favorite color of some of the people in your life or colors from your culture. And then on the flip side, much like my hand that I showed you here, you can add some of the things. So for me, I like family time. I like art and sewing. I like funny movies or TED Talks even. I actually go out of my way. I love jigsaw puzzles. And it says, one of my favorite accessories is my hair. I even got ready for you today. And it's part of my culture to when I shave my hair, cut my hair, to put the hair in the wind to share with the birds. And I added origami because I really do love origami. And butterfly reminds us that we're changing from one to another. We all have potential. We all have something to learn and all have something to share with one another. And when we do a self-care plan, what we're doing is we're also asking teachers to think about what are some of the conditions that we need to put a heartbeat into this conversation. So we're not just reading a document or making this like a flatline discussion. There's a lot of heart involved in talking about lived experience of oppression. So oftentimes we circle up when we're at the museum. We have circles, and I know we can't circle up on the computer, but we have a chance to at least, you know, share with you ways to care for each other. Because what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about how history in 2021, when the world woke up after the little bones were found in Kamloops of 215 Indigenous residential school survivors, we are reminded we're all human. Because one of the things I talked about getting ready for today is that history has a superpower for forgetting our humanity. So we light our candles at ROM school programs for all those 215 children and all the children to come that will be found as a result of this one recent find. Because there are many residential schools across Canada, and there will be many more unmarked graves to be found. So as we go through this, what's really important to understand is there's a moment in history that really helps us better understand why we have such a bad attitude towards Indigenous peoples. And that it goes back to Christopher Columbus arriving in 1492, and a year later has a conversation in 1493 with the Pope. And the Pope says, if you find new lands, you can claim it without Christians. If you find new lands with no Christians, you can claim that land in the name of God under something called the doctrine of discovery. So that's an important part of our history, because if we're not Christian throughout history, we've been dehumanized. That's the bigger picture there. And residential schools has a history that's rooted in Dr. Egerton Ryerson, whose statue was recently toppled at the university, because he was the brainchild behind residential school. So I'm just jumping through this because what I really want you to understand is that Canada's Indian Act and policies of assimilation are young compared to how long Indigenous people have been here. These policies of assimilation are young. The last residential school closed in 1996. And that's not even a black and white photograph anymore. So we're going to pull this all together by just remembering that history has dehumanized Indigenous populations. If you look up the word reservation, it's a place set aside for animals, because that's what the church and state thought of Indigenous populations. So it allowed for land and people to be occupied the world over. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take some time to introduce my, it's not just any guest. This guest comes from my homeland and is also Nuu-chah-nulth. And we live here in Ontario, and I am so pleased that Pamela Carter has able to join us today. Welcome, Pamela. Chue. Lovely. So when she unmutes her camera and comes on board, we'll be ready to start. So the bigger part of Pamela's invitation today is to find out more about our experiences as intergenerational residential school survivors. Welcome, Pamela. Oh, we saw you. Your camera's gone again. Welcome back.
Hey, it worked. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Sister Jeanette. It's so happy to see you.
Thank you. I'm so pleased you're able to join us. I'm going to put the rainforest behind me because that's where both our beautiful hats came from. So when we're out in public, you'll know, hey, they might be related because our hats look similar, eh?
Yeah, our hats are cedar, made out of cedar, and all of our regalia is pretty much made out of cedar.
It's true. I'm so glad you're able to join us today. And maybe you'll take a moment to introduce yourself.
Okay, Wakantanka Takashala, Wian Pajuta Luta Hemia Hechea. My spirit name is Red Medicine Woman, and I'm Tsimshian and Nuu-chah-nulth, which is from the coast of BC. And also, I belong to the Eagle clan and the Killer Whale clan, and I'm also enjoying living on the Tyendinaga territory.
Thank you. So I'm so glad you're able to join us today. And, you know, we're here. Last time we met to rehearse, we had just over 1,200 learners. Today we have 4,100. Because I guess educators are very aware it's time that we talk about this difficult truth. And what makes it important that we agreed this was a sensitive topic warning? Why did we say that? Getting ready for our grade 7 to 12 learners. What do you think is important to understand?
Well, I think, everyone's becoming aware of the children that were found. And I know that because I work with survivors, Indian residential school survivors, who are in their 70s. So they are, they're still alive, they're still here, their families are still here. So, the genocide and oppression, I think because our people were so resilient to live off the land, that we survived and thrived.
So this isn't a black and white photograph. This isn't a time warp back into like the distant past. Is right, something that I'm aware of, right? It's not
Yes.
long ago. Like one of the things that I put up when we're talking are these moccasins, because these moccasins come from Duck Lake. And what can we forever remember about Duck Lake? What does that make you think of? Duck Lake, Saskatchewan. It's where the last residential school closed down. So these moccasins are in First Peoples Gallery, and they're from the 1900s, right at the time when residential school survivors might show up with brand new moccasins made by their grannies and their aunties and their mothers, but they get taken away at residential school because we weren't allowed to express ourselves. So I know that you and I both are intergenerational survivors. Can we help our guests understand a little bit about what that might mean?
Yes, I forgot to say that I'm intergenerational because both my parents went through Port Alberni Residential School, which is on Vancouver Island, and most all of my family went through residential school. So this goes back to like my grandma. So my grandma and your grandma, like if you think about the age of your grandma, that's about the age of the people that went through residential school.
Exactly right. And so for today, well, I got ready, and my mom's been gone for over a year now, so I could pull out her photographs. But there's my beautiful mother, who is often on the front line of many of the downtown east side protests for missing and murdered Indigenous women. And we donated her flag. At the end of her days, we donated her flag to those ladies because she always showed up with her flag. And then I just wanted to include a little bit of heartbeat to the conversation because my mom was one of six children. My grandmother had nine children. My mother had six. But by the time my mother had me and my little sisters, my three brothers were adopted to three different white homes because I'm also an intergenerational survivor and 60 scoop survivor, which is the next wave of assimilation. And I was raised in white foster care. And I was really lucky I got to stay with my little sisters because my foster parents said it was okay. And just to fast forward, here's my little puddle of DNA. I've got a 28-year-old this year, 20-year-old, and this little guy's going to be 13. And he's the only one that I'm taller than. So we're not wiped out, right? We haven't been wiped out.
Yeah.
We have lived experience of oppression in our lifetime. So we can't talk about this as an issue like it's somewhere long ago. It's living histories, living histories. Are you getting settled into your new space?
Yes.
I'm so happy because I'm
So
just
don't mind me, guys. I have two cats who have to be involved too.
100%. What can you what do you feel comfortable sharing with us about your family's journey through residential school?
Well, actually, I was raised pretty much, I guess, in colonization, and that was the point of putting our children in residential school was to be colonized. And so I was kind of raised that way. I did not understand that I was indigenous or that I carried a lot of indigenous wealth because of who I come where I come from. Just even like our culture, that's the most wealth that I could ever ask for in my life. Because I'm so proud to be West Coast, but I did not know that before. When I only learned that I was um, different probably when Hollywood movies came out and showed you these romanticized ways of Indian people.
Yes. When I worked as a counselor years ago, I remember elders who were residential school survivors saying they would want to be the cowboys when they played cowboys and Indians because Hollywood didn't
Yes.
give the Indians such a good outcome. So I think what we can agree on that that's become something we end up calling internalized racism, where over time we learn to hate parts of ourselves we might not know a lot about or might not have as much information from, but we're also getting a lot of brainwashing and propaganda and rhetoric from media that makes it sound like we're all alcoholics, we're all in prison, we're all down and out. We're not a pitiful story. We have a country that has had a boot on our neck with the Indian Act since at least 1776. We know
And we
colonization.
can't breathe.
Exactly. You can't breathe with the Indian Act on your neck. As a we are lucky though as parents, right? We have a generation of children that are born free. My grandmother had nine, my mother had six, I had three. I didn't have to keep having babies because after my mother and grandmother would have babies, they would be taken. And I didn't have to keep having them, thankfully, because three's enough. Three's a lot. And I love my beautiful three.
I
Are you
really
still?
commend you for having three because I have one I could barely figure out. And that
Are you?
I actually put that towards my intergenerational uh, that's
Trauma.
how it affects me is my mother wasn't there. So when I think about mothering now, I feel like I'm very like over gentle with my son and he needs to be more disciplined. But, you know, because our people were raised disciplined and didn't have so many opportunities or given anything, it's just kind of like intergenerational. I want my son to have everything. And I,
Yes.
you know, and when I was thinking about when I started looking for my own culture, that's when my identity started growing, like of who I really am as an Indigenous person. And so I learned that about Indian residential school, like I didn't know about it till I was in my 20s. So
Yes.
I didn't, my parents never talked about it. And then in my 40s, I actually heard the story. And the stories are so horrendous. And then to look at my son at the age that he was at the time I heard that story, he was only 9 years old. So to know that my dad and my mom went through those tough things as little children, I'm just, you know, I'm really grateful that we don't, you know, for our survivors to go through that means we don't have to.
That's
Like we were raised in Canada, you know, I'm Canadian as well, but I'm also First Nations first.
exactly. Always First Nations first, because our peoples with an S, our peoples, because we're more than one good looking group, are have been here since beginning of time. So there may be some more questions, but you know, people are asking, are we going to learn sign language or about residential school? Well, thanks for your patience. We have a sign language interpreter today, and so it might look like there's more sign language going on, but we're making this broadcast available live to our deaf community. So thanks for your patience for seeing more sign language than you might be used to. I meant to say that our sign of the day is Indigenous children are human. So that's the letter H, right? Indigenous children of the people of the water and the land are like the children, and people are human. That's my sign of the day, because history forgot our humanity. History forgot it, and we're here to remind you. We're still a heartbeat, right? We're still here. And I like to, on Canada Day, my kids and I chant, "We survived colonization." So someone asked what we meant by boot on our neck. It's a metaphor. The Indian Act does not allow Indigenous people freedom. It's so it has like a symbolic boot on our neck. We don't have the freedom to like our identity. You and I live off reserve, for example. 40 to 60% of us live off reserve. We pay taxes. So there's a myth out there that we don't pay taxes. We pay taxes. Do you agree, Pamela?
Yes, I
We
pay
pay
a lot
taxes.
of taxes.
We pay taxes. So the
Yeah.
Indian Act is selective. You're Indian, but as soon as you leave the reserve, you pay taxes. So it gets complicated, right? It gets complicated. And we have Indigenous voices that what's exciting is that we have a chance to just learn that history um, has been selective in the past, but what we need to do is make sure, like here at the ROM, you can see our Indigenous Museum educators actually teaching our own ROM staff about our history, because not everybody shares this common ground. So what are some of the things we can encourage to students and teachers alike? I think about things like circling up. You know, we want to make sure people know that we have already shared kids helpline information, so that if anybody needs to text or talk to somebody if they're feeling emotional, because sometimes our history is an echo of other cultures' history, wouldn't you say? A bit, Pamela, that sometimes the oppression our people have experienced other nations see us tell our story and go, they took our children away too. They made us, they took our land and took our resources, and we were always poor, like there are patterns in history.
We would actually be the wealthiest people on earth if things went differently. And I would just comment about the Indian Act. That's the Queen made something in place that she will take care of us. So the reservations were supposed to take care of us, or it wasn't very good care because we were given staples of food like sugar, flour, uh, that
Oh, yeah.
our bodies weren't even used to processing, and we're used to living off the land, and we were put on a small little land called the reservation, where we used to also have to have a pass to leave.
Yeah. And the other piece is that if you do the math, I think Canada is like the second or third largest country in the world. And we have less than 1% of land put aside for reservations, because the rest is crown land that the state and the Queen profit from to this day. So now that the Queen has retired and wants to hand off it to be her king, why doesn't she apologize? That's me getting a little personal there. The other is, Pamela, someone asked if we knew each other when we were younger. I wonder where we met, but I know that once we were both in Toronto, or we've known
I
each other
think we both worked at the counseling center together
forever
in
ago.
Haywood. Yeah.
Forever ago. So we didn't grow up as children, but we grew up helping our community and met each other as helpers in our community. Someone is asking, would they call people who came here and are now here making city, would they call them Canadians too? And would all Indigenous, the same thing, put them in the same group of Canadians? I think Canada is a really 1857 onward. It's a very new thing. It's not a long time ago, 150 plus years ago. It's not an old country. There's been a lot of squatting here for the last 500 years, but officially Canada is very young. Someone is saying, I think that Canada is the second largest landmass in the world, and we only have 1% land set aside for Indigenous peoples. So we're going to switch the conversation in a flash. Think about this. What are some of the things students and teachers could do to respect living Indigenous cultures? Active things like, I'm going to suggest buy from Indigenous authors, buy Indigenous music. I think Indian Affairs should pay Indigenous musicians to be their background music while we're waiting online forever. What do you think? Or
That would
something,
be very beautiful.
isn't it? Authentic music.
Well, what I was sharing about our culture, I forgot to also mention that we were also banned from practicing our culture, like right till the 50s, right, Jeanette? Something
Yes.
like that. So,
1951. Yeah.
so when I started researching for my identity, it's actually reclaiming something that was tried to be erased. So when
Yes.
you see the spot blanket and you see the carving or hats, those are very ancient ways that we lived off of. So everything has a meaning, and so everything to us has a spirit and a meaning. It's very sacred. So when we're looking at the resources of Mother Earth, that's very sacred to us. We don't harvest everything. We harvest what we need, and we also replenish that. So just I don't know how I got that far talking about that, Jeanette, but I just wanted to also
Well, I think what
talk
we're
about
also saying to our
culture.
Canadians, our Canadians, is to adopt the same worldview, right? We're not looking for Indigenous converts, but if we look at the world from another way, we get an opportunity to then say, hey, maybe we shouldn't be more wasteful. We're finding out from COVID, we don't need to buy as much as we need to. And that environmentalists and Indigenous land protectors have been saying the same thing all along. Someone made a comment that if the conditions on reserve are so bad, why doesn't everybody just move to the city? Because it's our homeland. and we have a birthright to have a place to call home. Everybody else is taking up the 99+% of Canada. We have the right to live in our homelands. And what we need is the Canadian state and the crown, because the crown's relationship goes back to 1763, which is the Royal Proclamation. And that's an agreement with the crown, the Commonwealth, our head of state. And I think we need a royal tax paid to Indigenous peoples going forward, because we deserve to be treated like royalty in our own lands after being made second-class citizens. So yeah, we're not going to move to the reserve because the conditions, like, we have a birthright, and that's where our ancestors' bones are buried. So it's a very uncomfortable question to ask that I would like to just leave that there. I know that one of the things that people are asking is that someone was asking, what did we feel was our feeling about the Pope refusing to apologize for Catholics' involvement in residential school? My
You
humble,
want me to respond?
if you like,
Okay.
a question.
Well, for me, the word sorry or apology is lip service. I want to see action.
Yeah,
Like, they need to put a law that they cannot um, ban us from our cultural, traditional, spiritual ways ever again. Because we're very lucky that some of us picked up that culture.
yeah,
And some of us just want to be Canadian. I'm proud to be actually both because it's Canadian was born on our land.
yes.
So um, I'm not um, ashamed of both. I'm very proud of being successful in the colonized world as well as successful in picking up our cultural traditional ways and carrying it to the next generation. And that's kind of what the role of myself is as a intergenerational. I'm the first person in my family to pick up our culture, and I remember my mom being so ashamed, like, because she was so um, raised, was so racist against to have our culture, our color of our eyes, our brown hair, or color of our skin, all of that. She showed me her life being blonde and blue eyed, and always kind of like being
Passing.
yeah, like she did not want to acknowledge her indigenous self until I started to.
Yes. My late mom, had an angel, porcelain angel with a cedar bark headband, which kind of sums up our generation because she really embraced her Catholic roots. And that was my mom. And I learned that in the name of God, I remember my uncle saying that he was told his parents were evil and only Jesus loved him. And so God makes me nervous when you get him indoors is my favorite quote from a movie. So my response to the Catholic school question is that, like you, I want action. I think we need to start to charge all churches taxes, property tax and squatting tax, because they haven't paid taxes for a long time. That's me getting personal again, but I recognize that this is a very important time in our history for us to turn the page together, because we know this won't be the last, sadly, gravesite to be found, but we also know that there are living Indigenous peoples here and now, and we need to celebrate who we're becoming, and we're not just defined entirely by our past. So thank you for being such a courageous and honest guest with me at a really important time. And we know we changed this date because we were trying to accommodate somebody else, and we changed this date because I think the universe needed the two of us to be here after a very long week for everybody else to hopefully come away with a little bit of insight that Indigenous people have been given a really dreadful script of being dehumanized for long enough, and that maybe we, with our orange shirt and all of our solidarity, we recognize and celebrate each other's humanity going forward. Anything you'd like to add?
Sure, like the religious part. Um, I'm I wasn't raised religion because both my parents went to residential school and it was forced on them, so they didn't want to force it on me. They just wanted me to choose my own choice. I was very lucky to find native culture and traditional and spiritual ways. Um, and So I just wanted to say that um, I lost it. What was I
Okay.
saying, Jeanette?
Just that I think part of it for you is I've heard you share a consistent method that you strike a balance. You might not have been raised with religion, but we can
Mhm.
still learn from each
Yes,
other across cultures. Don't try to make me religious, and I won't try to make you
yes.
indigenous.
And I respect people's religious choice too. Like I do respect, you know, the religion of Christianity and Catholic because if we lined it up to our own spirituality, it's it's all the creator's um, gifts to us to learn to live on Mother Earth together. Like the medicine wheel has the four colors because we all unite together for Mother Earth. So I just, I I don't discount people's religion because I have a strong connection to the Creator, and I wouldn't want anybody to ever take that away from me
Yes.
again.
Well, one of our elders in this region that we probably both have encountered, Anishinaabe Kwe Granny Kim Wheatley, says we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. So thanks again for joining us today. Our time has already flown by.
Oh,
True, Kleko,
thank you
Kleko.
for thanks
Thanks
for
so much.
having me.
Super. We're always happy for people to tune in. We're going to take a moment to introduce Sarah Elliott. Welcome, Sarah.
Hello,
Th-
everyone.
Thanks, Sarah. This work does not happen without this powerhouse in the background, making sure all of our tech works and gives you a snapshot of what teachers and students can expect after today.
So teachers, keep an eye on your emails. In about 24 hours, you will be receiving a follow-up email with educational resources, lots and lots of follow-up to the topics that we've had today. And I know there's a lot of questions still, and we hope that the educational resources that we're going to be sharing will help address some of those questions with your students. Also, keep an eye out on the YouTube channel if you want to go back and review anything from this webinar. It should go up on our YouTube channel roundabout Wednesday with nice edited captions. And please also keep an eye out in that email for the survey link that helps us always keep improving Indigenous voices.
Wonderful. And thank you to our sign language interpretation team who's worked to keep up with us today and help celebrate that Indigenous children are human. So let's remember our humanity. Thank you very much to Association for Native Development in the Performing and Visual Arts for supporting our artist fee and our guest today. And thanks to the Slate Family Foundation for their support over the years for amazing, authentic Indigenous activations. And I just want to thank you, the teachers and students alike, for staying tuned in and for caring enough to hearing from Indigenous people directly here at the ROM School programs. Stay home, stay safe, and when you can, make art. Take care, everybody. Chew.